But this is really a company that's just posted a third consecutive quarter of profitability. And perhaps the biggest story here is the artificial intelligence platform, which speaks to all the generative AI discussions and investments and opportunities that we've been talking about day in, day out on CNBC. But where Palantir is concerned, you're talking about it in real time with sensitive data and government contracts.
That's right. Yeah. AIP is Palantir's fourth platform. Obviously, the original product was called Gotham, and then they added Foundry and Apollo to that, the artificial intelligence platform being the most recent. It's really important to address the core problems of large enterprises, which is really enabling these large language models that have grown in popularity to run on private networks, on private data. The safe handoff between existing legacy systems that are already in use by the enterprise, as well as the enterprise-grade governance that's required to make that stuff work in a secure way, is something that Palantir is really uniquely suited to provide, and has been kind of the MO of what they've been working on since they were originally founded.
Yeah, and what you just said is really key here, because when we're talking about some of these companies that are quote-unquote dual-use technology, I think investors, at least in the public markets, can understand commercial applications when a Palantir says that it's growing by double digits, for example, last quarter. But the defense piece of it, it's that you hear about it in defense circles a lot, the valley of death. Is policy building that bridge to get over the valley of death for some of these startups right now that are winning some of these early contracts or some of these early development awards, but then still need to grow and still need to see those revenues in a more sustainable way?
There are a lot of ways that you could change law, that you can move things around to make the transition easier. Most of this is going to be behavioral and cultural, though. Decision making to get new entrants into the market. We shouldn't forget that it took a long time for Palantir and SpaceX to finally hit their stride into production. Obviously, things are going really well now. And really, those are two companies that went government first and then transitioned into commercial. And it's a really unique motion. I'm not surprised by Palantir's continued dominance on the commercial side of things, showing over 20% growth, closer to like 40% growth if you take the SPAC side of the things out of it. So they've really been crushing on that front. And I think a lot of that is from building a real enterprise grade product. Working with the government over the last, decade plus, like figuring out how you can go in, have a real impact on a production level, and shift the culture of the government towards the new entrants that have the ability to build the capabilities that will be required for the future.
This is going to be a strong fundamental performance from tech, from software, from chips going the second half of the year. And in my opinion, despite the Fed, despite what we see in terms of the 10-year, I think tech powers through this. We see 12, 15% gain second half of the year. And I think it goes into 2024. We believe the new tech bull market is here. NVIDIA and overall tech is going to go, we believe it rips much higher into the second half of the year. I view that pause that we saw post, sort of sell-off as more of a golden buying opportunity, not the time, in my opinion, to get out of this, because I believe this is just halftime of a Super Bowl type tech rally that we see going into the next 18, 24 months. You're talking about revenues that potentially could double over the next 2 years. And I think the important thing for the market, it's not just NVIDIA. It's about what this means for Microsoft, for Google, for some of the pure plays, from Salesforce to Palantir and others. And I just think, in my opinion, this is just starting what I view as probably the biggest transformational tech theme we've seen in 30 years.
It's going to be years until we see the results in these other companies that are using generative AI reflected in terms of their usage, correct?
No doubt. And I think that's why most of my conversations from an investor perspective, it's not focused on the next quarter or two from Microsoft, for Amazon, for some of the names like Salesforce. It's, okay, look out 12, 18 months. Where could numbers go?
And wow, Jenny, I got to admit, I haven't had my eye on this one as much the last few weeks. I knew it had made a really impressive run in recent months. We had talked about it a few times.
And this has really been the story for Palantir. Analysts have applauded their position in AI, but they have been concerned over their valuation, what the next catalyst is to send the shares higher. The stock has really followed the ups and downs that we've seen the other names in AI have, with AI optimism very high, but interest rates and inflation pressures continuing to wear on all of them. We saw them host their first ever AI platform conference at the start of June. The CEO reiterated that the company's seen unprecedented demand for their AI products. To put it into perspective, he said Palantir had received as many calls in 1 month as they had previously received in a year. And we just saw them report their second consecutive quarter of positive net income.
You know, when you're looking at this one, Jeff, obviously the ties to the U.S. government are helpful, given that that check is typically blank and it can last for a long time if you have a good relationship with the government, of course. But the growth opportunities are going to need to kind of go beyond that. They're going to have to get, key partnerships with other companies when it comes to data analytics and the AI stuff that they're working on. There is a lot of optimism on this name. It does seem to be somewhat polarizing. There's, not believers, and then there's the believers when it comes to it. But you can't escape from the really tremendous year-to-date performance, basically going 3x. But so many names are seemingly doing that right now. Names the size of Meta and NVIDIA have basically done the same. So when you're looking at this one, Jeff, you never want to say is now different, but this would be alarming in other times. But they're not alone with this much excitement to the upside. Is potentially still an exciting time for this space despite these incredible moves?
Yeah, and I think that's what investors are looking at is reality versus expectations, right? If you look at the Q1 report, you mentioned the government contracts. That makes up around 50 to 60% of their revenue, up 20% year over year in Q1. We saw commercial up double digits. We saw U.S. revenue up double digits. We saw their total customer count increase 41% year over year, 50% in the U.S. And they had a good outlook as well, raising their full year expectations to $2.185 to $2.235 billion. The question for a lot of investors out there is what is already built into the stock? We know AI has got a big push. We've seen these names push through a lot of these headwinds, including the inflation pressures, and you've got so much expectation built in the stock. Is this one of those scenarios where we could see some possible profit taking if they miss just slightly in one area?
As far as Palantir goes, Alex mentioned this almost has like meme stock potential, but I was shocked to see its percent of its shares that are sold short is only like 7%, which is well below like AMC, GameStop, Carvana has like 62%. So this name, while we do see this really resurgence in interest in Palantir, it's not seeing the same amount of short selling as the other meme stocks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big part of it is the AI aspect. This name has really been kind of set for this AI atmosphere before ChatGPT and other names really started to push forward, and that's really given some legitimacy to the name for a lot of investors out there. That's why we have seen some of this kind of meme stock push behind it. But there's also been your standard investors that are really looking at the facts here. And you talked about new deals. They're continuing to see them. Last week we saw them expand their partnership with Carahsoft Technology. They're going to distribute for Palantir, which will make their Apollo platform more available to the public sector. Yes, about 60% of their revenue comes from federal government, used mostly by those defense applications. But that has been something that, we've seen from the company for a long time. Their AI side of the platform could push over into their government revenue as well. And I think the expectations are high. And so it's not just that meme stock craze. We are seeing investors look at this as more of kind of a long-term name with a big runway for AI.
Yeah, and perhaps seeing some signs of maturity in Palantir. And I do recall from discussing this name all year long, we've gotten major fundamental and guidance updates that have propelled shares higher. It hasn't just been all on hype, like you said. So important to differentiate this name from the meme stock nature in which I think a lot of times it was associated with, at least in former years.